Welcome to the ENDUROX Podcast with Dr. Dan Plews and Dr. Adam Storey, where high performance meets real-world application.
Adam, how's the jet lag, mate?
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being devastating, I'd probably say maybe about a 4.5. Not too bad. Not too bad. I
That's
think
all right.
the coaches summit in March to London absolutely destroyed me. So I was a little bit worried. I'll say shit scared about this one. But it wasn't too bad. Like the flights were quite spicy, man. It was three freaking flights to get there. So I went Vancouver, Auckland, Vancouver, Frankfurt, Stockholm, and coming back it was Frankfurt, Singapore, New Zealand. So
That's not so bad on the way back then.
not too
I know
bad
it's
on the
still
way
pretty
back.
flights, but I was looking at a few Kiwis going over, and they were looking at like, I saw some 40 hours worth of travel.
Yeah, and it's just crazy. I went over as part of the Sports Science Advisory Council and the other members there. I think their longest flight that they had to do was 2.5 hours. And I'm just like, shut up. It's just not fair.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So we've got so much to catch up on, and I don't really know where to begin, but I definitely want to talk about your experience at the World Championships. I'd love to talk about what you did there. Also, I really want to catch up on the racing, obviously, because I think we can have a debrief of what we saw in what was some very exciting racing over an intense weekend. But one of the things I did want to talk about before we begin with that is the debacle that's been going on in New Zealand recently with the NZ Muscle story. Have you been following that much?
Yeah, like it kind of dropped onto my lap as I was getting back to New Zealand. So I think for full context, please, you're probably better informed to give the viewers a bit of an update if they haven't.
I mean, it sounds like it's just for people who are in New Zealand, but I think it goes into such a broad context, especially for someone like me who I work for a nutrition company, right? I'm the head of research and innovation for Pillar Performance. But to give a bit of background, NZ Muscle, I would say they're one of the biggest suppliers of sports nutrition in New Zealand, but they also have their own branding. So they bring in a lot of different stocks of like, Switch Nutrition. I know they bring in like the Chris Bumstead protein, but they also have their own range of protein, their own whey protein isolates. But they bring in glutamine. They're actually as well. They're the official retailer for center equipment, HYROX center equipment in New Zealand as well. I bought my center equipment from NZ Muscle. So, but long story short, they have been really they've been investigated for food safety standards for a variety of claims, which all appear to be true. And these claims go from basically selling products that's past the sell-by date, which is probably a low misdemeanor, and another low misdemeanor would be removing 1 and 2 star reviews from their product ratings. But the biggest one that they've been doing is that, for example, their whey protein isolate was on the label, it's like sourced in New Zealand, from grass-fed beef, blah, blah, blah. But there's videos of them actually buying their own whey protein isolate from other sources like US and China, and basically taking off the labels and putting their own labels on. So there's and there's stories of people like calling NZ Muscle saying, hey, this is what's happened to the flavor, it's changed. And they were saying, and their response was, the reason the flavors change is because it's such a whole food source. We get them from whole food sources that the change the flavors change within the seasons.
Seasonal changes. I heard that one. I was like, jeepers, that's a long stretch.
Oh my gosh. But I think it's so interesting. I mean, I bought a lot from NZ Muscle, but I've never bought their whey protein isolate. In fact, I've never bought any of their products because I just feel like they're a bit dodgy. They just seem to be dodgy. And I was saying this to Kate, my wife, and I'm like, I've never wanted to buy their whey protein isolate because something just didn't sit right with me. I bought other products from them before. Like I buy the glutamine from them, for example, but not their glutamine. I buy the Switch glutamine. But I think it's like a bigger it's a bigger question at large is the standardization of the sports nutrition industry generally, why you should always try and buy something that's informed sport tested It's just so important. And that's regardless of whether you're going to get tested or not. But you want to know what you're going to be getting in your packaging. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's crazy.
It is
So,
crazy, and I think I'm the same, mate. I have not purchased anything from NZ Muscle, and probably case in point, because like from, I guess, an external branding perspective, they're kind of, like, from my perspective anyway, they're kind of marketing that kind of gym bros kind of
yeah,
bodybuilding kind of scene. And as you mentioned, like that stuff is just not informed sport tested. And for you and I, coming from high performance sports settings where
mm,
that's just drilled into us that it needs to have that tick,
yeah.
for one's safety, but also consistency as to what's in it. You've just never gone down that product route, and obviously won't now, because I don't think they will ever
No,
come
they're
back
not
from
going
this.
to. They're not going to come back from this at all.
And I think
But
Centre will be cutting ties there as well.
yeah, I think most people have been cutting ties, and it all
Mm.
stemmed from an old employee. Basically made a YouTube documentary on it.
Wow.
And it's had 300,000 views now, that documentary. But I tried to find that documentary online today, and I couldn't find it. But
Wow.
it's a very interesting story. Um,
Wow.
you know,
Hey, Hollywood loves a whistleblower, eh? Do you reckon it'll be a movie? Might have the
may-
Rock Johnson in
maybe,
there, maybe. Who knows?
maybe. Well, or you, because you are the baby rock.
I am a stunt double. That's a proven
Exactly.
fact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But now well, maybe we'll see how things. So now they're under official investigation. So
Yeah.
they see I guess whether they're going to be found guilty as
Crazy.
charged, but I think they will be.
What's your takeaway then from that, mate, for our listeners out there? What's
Well,
your
the
fatherly
takeaway
advice?
is buy Pillar Performance products.
Oh, jeez, that's a plug from hell if I've ever heard one.
I'm allowed to. No, but I think
Yeah.
it's like, I think the takeaway is just know that you get informed sport, know your sources, and I think
Mm,
my rule of thumb, when remember someone once told me that the more color and more pictures and cartoons are on the front of a nutrition packaging, the more
mm,
likely it to be contaminated.
mm. True
You know?
story. True story. And I
So,
think I think this is it is a bit of a left field kind of chat for us, but I think it is actually pertinent, because over at World Champs in Stockholm, like I had a chat with a few different people around peptides and, HRT and all this kind of stuff. And I think, that was part of a wider discussion in terms of drug testing within HYROX. So there's just a lot of inconsistencies at the moment. Like, there's obviously Elite 15 are
mm.
tested, but then it's like, well, what about age groupers,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and across the board? And, so there's a lot of things being weighed up. And again, the discussions were around, HYROX is about longevity, it's about health, it's about inclusion. And a matter of fact is that a lot of age groupers, we're talking sort of 50 plus individuals, will be on some form of TRT or HRT. So then what do you do there? Do you sort of blanket statement say, that's a no-go? But then I guess, when you're trying to gun for the Olympic Games on the other end of the spectrum, that's pretty hard and fast in terms of what you can definitely not do. So those kind of discussions were kind of boiling up. So I think it does come full circle to that NZ Muscle thing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Regardless if if you're going to get tested or not, you still should be gunning for those informed sport products. So 100%.
I mean, it's a super interesting one. So one of my friends got well, he got he didn't make the podium basically. Well, he got he I don't know how to say this now. Anyway, I said to him afterwards, because we said, well, I would say that half of the people in the older age groups are likely taking some type of peptide now, particularly if they're
Yep.
from the States, because they are rife. And I have a number of my
Yep.
age group competitors in triathlon, and they talk to me about how rife the peptide situation is. And my comment to his is, I said, the only thing to stop an age group HYROX athlete from taking anything that's not legal is integrity. There is
Yep.
nothing else to stop you. Yes, I think they have some in competition testing, but
Mm,
the in competition testing's absolutely hopeless. It does nothing.
mm, mm.
That's not having the biggest effect. It's the stuff around the training, and you can
Yep.
take things and take out. And I can guarantee that there are some influencers who are on the top of the podiums who will be taking
Mm.
taking some TRT or PHRT, sorry, or
Yep.
some form of peptides. But the peptide is such a, I feel like it's a bit like the Wild West at the moment, and someone needs to grab a hold of it, because I'm not necessarily even think it's necessarily a massive performance enhancer. But I think it could be a health enhancer. It's just it just needs to be regulated, because it's not regulated. It's just a bit of the Wild West, So
Yeah, and that's a great
the
point
problem.
that we definitely chatted about over there as well, as what is the balance between what is a health enhancer,
Yeah,
like as you mentioned, versus a PED or a performance
yeah,
enhancer. Because at the end of the day, like some people may claim that, well, I'm taking this for health, but at the end of the day, it does actually have a performance benefit. So then that goes back to the whole integrity issue. Are you happy to claim that podium knowing that you've actually had a wicked advantage versus second and third place?
yeah. Well, the GLP is a prime example, because I don't know if you followed any of the research in the GLP microdosing and the longevity, some of that
Yep.
longevity stuff that's coming out. But
Yep.
obviously, GLPs, if it's maintaining a more lean mass, it's also a performance advantage, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really it's a really complex one, that's for sure. But
It is, and that one popped up as well, mate. It was like you're eavesdropping in that conversation. Because
maybe I
at the
was.
moment,
I
yeah,
I
yeah.
I hacked your phone.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Mm.
at the moment, yeah, it's getting like a lot of exposure, and even through the likes of Serena Williams and so forth. But yeah, chatting to, I think, I mean, I don't want to get his title incorrect, but he's on the medical board for HYROX anyway. But he was saying that next year it's going to be on the WADA list, the 2027 banned list.
Wireless band list. Yeah.
Yep,
Okay. Okay.
yep. So
So
again, like people be mindful of it.
I was chatting with someone the other day, and I'm just looking through because I wrote it down because it fascinated me that much, and I'm trying to find out what it was. Where was it? But someone told me this stat, and it was so the industry of AI is worth about 35 billion at the moment. The GLP peptides, 75 billion.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's what, from my memory, that's what. Yeah, it is. No, 75 versus 30 billion. Yeah, I've written it down here. That's the
My
difference.
God.
That's how big the GLP peptides industry is now. We remember this ENDUROX podcast. I'm telling you, it is a trove of information, far beyond just sport and
Yeah,
exercise science. Hey,
yeah.
there you
We
go,
might
people.
delve into cooking. We might delve into fashion, men's fashion. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. All right, mate. Anyway, so tell me about tell me about the trip. So where should we start? Do you want to start with a bit of racing talk, or should we start with a bit of what you got up to over there?
Yeah, I think we'll probably I'll go a bit of context as to why I was there, and then we can dive into racing then. And yeah, so it was one of those ones where you get a bit of FOMO. Obviously, you and I were at Worlds last year in Chicago, and then I was over there this time with the HYROX Sports Science Advisory Council, and yeah, it was cool. Like, it was an opportunity. It was only our second time that we've come together as a council in person. And it was a good opportunity for us. The whole purpose of that was for us to deliver a series of workshops. So we were targeting them to level 1 coaches, but then also we did some stuff with the Elite 15 coaches, the medical team, and sports team. So when I say sports team, that's the likes of Matt Locke, who's in charge of like setting up the venues for not only the elite races, but the HYROX competitions as a whole. And like, we'd sort of spitballed before World Champs as to what would be like an impactful thing for us to deliver on. And the topic that came to mind was heat and humidity, like how to acclimate for it in training, but also how to deal for it in competition. And that was coming off the back of, the recent heat wave in Europe. And unfortunately,
And
like
didn't
at the
so
Lyon.
yeah, I was going to say, Leon, someone died of heat stroke, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah, it was very unfortunate. So a 28-year-old woman, passed away in that competition, and it wasn't the only isolated incident. So I think there was 2 or 3 other deaths that same weekend. in different events as well, like one in a cycling race. So it was just rife, that heat wave going through. So, that was very top of mind in terms of, hey, where's a sport need to really front foot this in terms of like how to better prepare athletes, but also like how to manage the venue as well, because people that attended Lyon, for example, was talking to Anthony Pericini. He's part of our expert council, but he's also Lauren Weeks's husband. He was saying that the venue
JK's
was
coach as well.
What's that, mate?
He's JK's coach as well, and I think
JK's coach.
I think he still coaches old mate Bo Wills as well. I think.
Yep.
Maybe.
Yep. And he's a top man. But he was just saying, the venue itself was just not conducive to anything really. Like they had basically doors opened at either end to try and get airflow through. But, when you got that amount of people, when the outside ambient temperature is so hot, that just comes inside as well, and it just becomes suffocating. Yeah, so we touched upon a lot of cool things as to how we can, that's a bad pun, but how we can sort of help better prepare athletes and regulate competitions. But yeah, really good opportunity to obviously network and just see where the sport is going. And probably my biggest, one of the takeaways, not really a takeaway, but just realizations was the massive step up in the sport, even from a year ago when you and I were in Chicago, mate, at World Champs. Like that was a top-notch competition, but this one here was, it was next level, just being in that stadium type setup.
The stadiums, I've never seen a stadium setup, but it looks really cool. Yeah, and it's that is way more conducive to cooler conditions as well.
Yeah, you'd think so. So my first exposure to stadium racing as well, and straight away, like I'm an Olympic Games frother. I was just envisioning how cool this would be at the Olympics because, for example, the Elite 15, obviously on a smaller setup with their grid, I mean, you could hold that almost in like a hockey type stadium, almost something like that, whereas you don't need a full blown stadium.
Yeah.
The Elite 15 grid was only on half of it, but having the full spectator seats was amazing. You're going back to your point around the cooler conditions. Yeah, it was sort of touch and go, like circling back to Anthony Pericini. He has his own monitor to measure ambient temperature and humidity. So across the course of elite men's, women's, and doubles, he had taken snapshots of what it was in the venue. He was getting up from memory close to 24 degrees on the final day temperature, and his humidity was cranking, man. And
what was the humidity? Can you remember?
I don't want to say misinformation. Possibly high 60s, I think.
Okay.
But
I mean, it's not that bad. I mean, when you consider people are doing Ironmans in Kona, the only difference is, well, no, you continue because I've got some thoughts on this. John.
Yeah, no, completely agree. So I guess when you've got an Ironman in Kona, that's sort of part and parcel of it. Like you're expecting it, but I guess, people are still going into these events thinking, it's an indoor competition. It's going to be air conditioned, rah-de-rah, there's going to be fans. But even as a spectator in the stadium, it was a Strawberry Arena, you could feel the heat and even had...
were you as red as a strawberry?
Pretty much, mate. Pretty much. I'm always like that, mainly because of embarrassment. But even some of our Endurox athletes, once they'd finished the race, probably one of their first comments that they'd say, I was like, man, it was hot out there. So again, it was just a reality that they had to deal with it.
Yeah. So I mean, I made a comment about Kona, but one of the things that I think is really critical for HYROX, and I think is often kind of misunderstood, is it's actually almost an event that is primed for heat exhaustion, because heat exhaustion and being hot, it does not come from duration. It is always derived from intensity. So metabolic heat production is a thing that makes you hotter. And there's some classic papers that looked at when the world road race championships and time trial championships was in Qatar. They looked at the core temperature responses. So 250-kilometer road race versus a 40-kilometer time trial. 40-kilometer time trial, you're talking just soaring core temperatures, hour of effort, maximal. And the thing that is an addition with HYROX is that there are times where you have zero convection cooling. And the convection cooling aspect cannot be overlooked. It is so big. There's a
Mm.
great paper by Saunders et al., I think it was done in 2013, that looked at the effects of convection cooling in cycling, and it's massive, but it still comes across in running. So the problem is that when you're inside, but you are getting some convection cooling just for the fact that you're running. But when you get to stations like ski erg, row
Mm.
erg,
Mm.
wall balls, high metabolic demands, no convection cooling, it is a recipe for heat stroke or heat exhaustion. And I actually so John Wynn kindly once sent me his core sensor data from
Oh, awesome. Nice.
from his rating, and we did some analysis on it, and you can see clearly that during every run, so his core temperature just great. It wasn't because it wasn't a massively hot race, but you could see
Mm.
the story was the same in that core temperature gradually rise throughout the whole event.
Mm.
And then his skin temperature would go down during the runs, up during the
Mm.
stations, down during the runs, up during the stations. And
Mm.
your thermal sensation is an absolute key determinant of how well you're going to perform. If you feel hot, you will go slow. And we published papers when we looked at ice slushy as well, is that the
Mm.
thermal sensation is your biggest predictor. If you're feeling hot, you're going to be hot, which is why like half of the heat acclimation stuff is just getting used to feeling hot. Because if you can be
Mm.
comfortable feeling hot, you generally perform better in the heat. I mean, obviously you can do a lot of pre-cooling things as well. But yeah, it's I think like fans at the wall balls and stuff like that for hot venues is a pretty obvious one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess, it's a great point. So from your recommendations, are there ways that an athlete can better prepare for situations where there's not going to be that opportunity for convection cooling? Is there other than doing heat acclimation work, but are there kind of in-race strategies that would help in any way,
Yeah,
shape, or form?
100%. Well, I mean, the main thing is pacing. Pacing's absolutely critical because um, because if you once you get too hot, the only thing you can do is slow down, or your body will shut you
Mm.
down, right? So
Right.
pacing becomes even more important because if you go and obviously you can't really at the start, you don't feel that hot, but you can easily overrun. You can easily just get yourself very hot very quickly if you overpace yourself. If you go out too hard, your core temperature rises really, really quick.
Mm.
You can't do anything to then cool yourself down because you can't dissipate the heat through sweating. If it's really humid, then that's when you shut down. So in really hot venues, you go out too hot. If you
Oh, that's
excuse
bad pun, mate. Bad pun.
another great pun, you're gonna be in a lot of trouble. So pacing becomes
Mm.
even more critical, especially early pacing. Like the first run, the first ski, the second run,
Mm.
those stations will be really, really important to not get too hot too quickly. But the other thing would be adjusting the warm up. Is that
Yep.
you want to be doing things that's not raising your core temperature because you always think about heat as you've got a heat sink, right? So the deeper you can make your sink at the start, the more room you've got to go. If you're starting really, really
Mm.
hot,
Mm.
um, you've got less sink. So if you can start cooler, which means adjusting your warm up, not doing high intensity efforts, more some mobilizations, just keeping the core temperature as low as you possibly can. That's going to be a really good example. I always remember your doubles partner in Auckland. Prime
Oh,
example
yeah.
of somebody
Yep.
who
Yep.
did way too much in his warm up in a hot
Yep.
environment.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
He
Yep.
was so hot, so sweating before, and he basically capitulated, didn't he?
Mm. Mm.
After a few, wasn't it after the sled? He was just done because he was just so hot. So.
Yeah. That's right. Rest in peace, Nick. Um,
Yeah, but the things the things you can do will be, there's some pre-cooling with some ice vests and ice slushies, cool drinks, and all that kind of stuff can be really critical.
Yeah, I was just going to say. So we chatted about pre-cooling over in
Mm.
World Champs as a recommendation on it, and I know before that Auckland HYROX start of this year. I mean, it's horrendous. I think race day, was close to 28:30
Mm.
for you, and I know you thought about pre-cooling at home. Yeah, having an
I did
ice
pre-cool.
bath. Oh,
I
you
did
did.
ice
Yep.
bath. Yep, I did.
Yep. Yep.
So I left it because I ice bathed at home. I did a
Mm.
long one, jumped straight in the car, air conditioning, and I was still pretty cold by the time I started, and I didn't. I didn't feel. I'm pretty good in the heat.
Yeah.
Not to pump up my sails, but I won
Yeah.
Kona, so
Mm.
I'm good in. I am good in the heat, but I never felt hot during that race. I didn't feel hot once.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do think that those adjustments can really help you pre-cool. You stay in aircon as long as you can. You don't do too much of a warm up. All those little things can really
Mm.
help.
Mm. Yeah, spicy.
Yeah.
But overall racing is quite a drama-filled bloody event, wasn't it?
Oh my
Man.
gosh. If you'd have told me Dylan Scott was going to win, let's just talk about them. We'll go for the men's, then we'll get into the women's. If you have told me Dylan Scott was going to win the World Championships, I'd have been, yeah, I don't think so. But then, that would be an initial thought. But then I look back at his results from all the majors, and he's had a very good year. He's been there or
Very
thereabouts
consistent. Yep.
the whole time,
Yep.
and he just popped it at the end there. So, yeah,
Yeah.
kudos to him. I think he was going to beat Tim anyway. To be honest, I don't think he did beat him. He crossed the line before him, and Tim did one through a wall anyway. So, but the interesting thing about that race as well is that I think Hunter undid his own race himself by just by just claiming to do the sled push unbroken. Alex Rokovic tried to match him. He undid his race, but it just goes to show that I do really think that the sled push station, it's such a demanding one, and it's so easy to overexert during that station because it just pumps your legs, and then lo and behold, I think that's what he's doing, because I think Hunter, if he'd actually paced that better, he probably would have won that race.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, eh? Like before it kicked off, I was sitting with the HYROX crew and we were kind of doing our predictions, and I had placed Dylan within top 3. I was thinking more third, and that was based off his very, very consistent season. Hunter, I'd sort of outside chance for third, but had him top 5. But again, it's interesting, like to that point on the sleds, it's even, and again, this is a huge learning for any athlete, is that, you can be the most seasoned and experienced racer, but sometimes that ego creeps in, and Ronkovic is so strong on the sleds. And, as you mentioned, like Hunter trying to battle with Ronkovic, and man, it just cooked the two of them, and just the look of anguish on Hunter's face, like grimacing in pain, coming around. And I again said to the HYROX crew, I was like, oh my God, that man can hurt himself hard. Like man, incredible. That was incredible.
I often, it's interesting though. It's just expressions, isn't it? I'm sure everyone's hurting the same. He just shows it on his face so much. But the another interesting point, and Pelayo said this to me, so kudos to Pelayo. He said that Tim would have won that race if he hadn't slowed down going into the sleds. Did you see they came off they did the ski, they did the second one, then they all kind of just jogged running into the sleds. And I said, I asked Pelayo why they were doing it, and he said it's because they were all trying to no one wanted the first lane, apparently. So, they all slowed down, played cat and mouse, and he must have lost about 4 seconds, maybe a bit more than 4 seconds, because that whole group closed. They had a gap, and then suddenly everyone was together because they literally just started jogging as they got into the rock zone.
It was absolutely comical. And again, like I prefer watching things on TV, to be honest, like sport, because when you're watching it live, it's great, you get the atmosphere, but you can't get kind of the different angles and replays.
Yeah.
But watching it, I'm not too sure how well the cameras captured it, but it was just crazy to see these guys absolutely sending it, come in, and then almost comically stop. And I was saying to the HYROX crew next to me, I was like, is there has somebody injured themselves, or what's going on? It was like a crash on Formula One, man. And then you get like the yellow vehicles like slowing everyone down. But case in point, that lane choice, which they're looking to avoid. Interestingly, Matt Locke, the race director who attended one of our workshops, he was giving people just a bit of a debrief. And he said, unfortunately, they pretty much, I'm going to say it, they fucked up their own race because, out of fear of that lane choice, which the competition organizers had already shut off, so nobody was going to get that lane anyway. He said that poor decision from them really affected the results
You've just
across
got
the
to
board.
race it, man.
Just got to race it, man.
You just got to race it. It
Yep.
reminds me of London Olympics. So when I was at the London Olympics with the rowing crew, all week there was so basically when you in rowing, if you're the fastest qualifier, you get the middle lane, right? You get the middle lane, so it's kind of that arrow shape. And all week it was clear that the middle lane was catching more wind because in Eton the banks was sheltering from the wind, right? So Emma Twigg, we love you, Emma, by the way. I'm going to call you out here though. She was trying to be smart because she's thinking, okay, if by the final, if I don't want to be one of the fastest qualifiers, I'm going to get one of the outside lanes, which is a more sheltered lane. Plays the cats and mouse game, does that deliberately, comes to the final. The race organizers have realized this, and now they put the top seeds in the outside lanes. So suddenly you've gone from, and it's the exact same thing. Just don't play the system. You've just got to race it, man. You can be smart, but it always comes back to bite you in the ass, I think.
Oh, I agree, man. And you and I have spoken about this. Obviously, the purpose of this podcast as a whole, it's not about just science chat. It's about wider chat, and it's about coaching chat. And I think this conversation leads into, I guess, the art of coaching. And it's a bit of a cliche saying, man, that we talk about with athletes is control the controllables. But that's exactly that. You've got to control like your training, your preparation, how you're going to present. Don't try and sort of manipulate it to, as you mentioned, like sort of tweak things accordingly because you can't control that stuff. And as a result, it's probably going to bite you in the ass. Case in point, which it did with the final ranking results of the men's men's Elite 15.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, do you know what the other thing that I think was quite an interesting outcome, and I said this to you, was, some real standouts for me in that race was Dylan Scott, and the other standout was Charlie Bottrell. And I think, they had outstanding races. Charlie Bottrell, I think, would have been higher if he hadn't had that problem with the camera coming over the wall ball.
Crazy,
But what I messaged you about is, in the end of the day, it comes into this bigger training context. And I think this is where HYROX is going, and it will become this way. And I do believe that your best HYROX elite athletes will train more like triathletes and Ironman triathletes in terms of the hours, because in the end, volume wins. You cannot get away from high training volume. The only issue is, I think, with a high training volume, for that first period, as you adjust, it's a bit hit and miss. You have up, you have down races, but over time, as you adjust to that volume, it's just a winner. And I just think the high volume that those two do of training is the reason that they're so good on the world stage. And that's where I reckon a lot of the, I think the smartest now will start to realize that high volume training is the way. And there's going to be more cycling coming in. There's going to be more volume, lower intensity stuff, and go away from this typical CrossFit high intensity 12 hours a week nonsense. They're going to do 20, 25 hours a week. I think Dylan Scott's already there, and I know Charlie Bottrell's already there because he posts his training online. But it's but the evidence is clear as well. If you look at if you look at the research, the fastest people do the most training. Provided you can absorb the training, there is no such thing as a minimal effective dose. That is absolute nonsense. I just don't believe that term, minimal effective dose training. What does that even mean? Because as long as you can respond to the training, you can absorb the training, you'll always get faster. Christian Blummenfelt, those, the Norwegians, you talk about double threshold training, but that is not the reason they're so good. It's because they're training 30, 35 hours a week.
Yeah. And as you always say, mate, whether it's in a training context or not, that didn't even touch the sides.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was a cool post by Christian. Actually, go to Christian. And I hate miss sort of quoting things, but he said something along the lines of, like a a sick day or a sick week for him. You know, he's
20
not
hours.
doing less.
Yeah,
How much
20
was it?
hours. Yeah,
20
20
hours.
hours.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
And I
so
love
that's,
that.
so
Absolutely love that.
that's his off week, is a 20-hour
His
week.
off week. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he needs to be like pretty damn sick, he was saying, for him to do 20 hours.
It's very interesting because I've been getting into the science of this quite recently, and I haven't told you this yet, but I'm going to bring you in on the paper soon. But I've been writing a paper, and it's all about the sub 50 minute HYROX. And one of the things that's coming out of it is that because of this conflicting demand between like aerobic and strength, you improve your VO2 max, you improve your aerobic capacity, you'll reduce your anaerobic capacity, you'll likely reduce your strength capacity. It all comes back down to efficiency. So the person who's going to do well is the person who's going to have a very good running economy and be really efficient for the stations, because that allows you to do things fast without compromise, without having to have a massive engine, like a really high VO2 max and a really high aerobic capacity. But, again, when you look at efficiency, how do we get more efficient? Repetition, doing it more and more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
Under fatigue, under all conditions. So I think there's a lot to be said for that, because of the efficiency context of HYROX is the most important, as far as I can, far as what I can see from the literature and thinking about the whole thing as a whole.
Yeah. Two things on that. Firstly, I hope you just don't bring me on that paper for like the illustration purposes.
Mate, just the diagram, just the photos.
Yeah. Draw a barbell. But the second point, over in Stockholm, I recorded a podcast with our good friend and colleague Piers Plowman from HYROX 365. So that'll be coming out soon, hopefully.
Oh, good man.
He's a good
man.
Old
yeah.
Piers. Good man. He's a good man. Tallest man in the world. But again, it's a great chat, and we talk about, again, hot topic as always, the concept of max strength endurance, and so forth. But again, in that podcast, I really, again, emphasize the fact that at the end of the day, max strength is critical to still train, because the literature strongly shows that even in well-trained middle to distance long distance runners, it's the high intensity work which is the biggest contributor to improvements in running economy. And case in point, a HYROX race, whether you like it or not, 50% of that race is running. So again, the argument that max strength stuff, waste of time, you've got to do the demands of the sport, which is strength endurance, not necessarily the case. I'm not saying don't do strength endurance. I'm not saying that. But the context you have to do max strength is there, because even with circling back to middle to long distance runners, the research shows if they are doing strength endurance work, so we're talking about 15 to 20 rep stuff, moderate loads, that doesn't have a transference over to running economy. And if anything, it contributes to a worsening of performance, because it results in this ongoing fatigue.
Yeah.
So again, case in point, I loved how you mentioned running economy, so I just wanted to throw that in there as well.
Yeah, but anyway, I've been really enjoying writing this paper. But I'm not going to give too much away, because I can't, because we want to publish it in a peer reviewed publication. It's not going to be. This is going to be beyond an Instagram post and a blog form. We want it to be properly done. So, but
actually, sorry. Yeah, before we change topics, it's a great point there, Plews, around the volume, because even in circling back to Piers and I had a chat about this, that we're not even close to getting generational athletes in the sport, not even close. And there's no disrespect to the current Elite 15 and those that are there or thereabouts, but unfortunately, it's just the reality of the sport. Like we're still so new. And people are still trying to figure out training. And as you mentioned, it is about volume. And even the current Elite 15 are most likely going to be stepping up their volume based on, what they understand better and what they learn more. So performances will increase. So, and it's crazy to think that, in a few years' time, and this is how sport evolves, that there'll be high school kids and stuff knocking out similar times to the elites now. Do you know what I mean? It's just
yeah. I mean, you see it in triathlon. Like when I was growing up, I remember the first person, Lothar Leder and Luc van Leerde. I think it was in the 90s. They're the first people to break 8 hours. The best triathletes in the world, best Ironman triathletes in the world. Now, age group athletes break 8 hours. Amateur athletes breakout hours. So you will get to the point where, like, age groupers will be under 55s. They almost already are under 55s. They'll be doing the 53s, and the elites will be around the 50s, maybe slightly under. It's going to be. You just don't know where it's gonna go to. But I think, I think, like, at the moment, I feel like within the training context of the Elite 15, there's huge differences in the way people train. But I think they will diverge and become all very similar once, and they'll all go towards volume, and they will all go to. I mean, I made a post on Instagram a while ago, and it was a bit, and I'd admit it was a bit of a clickbaiter, but it was basically, I said why triathletes can learn more from why HYROX athletes can learn more from triathlon coaching than CrossFit.
Oh yeah.
And I stand by that wholeheartedly, because it's so, I mean, even the guys doing sprint distance triathlon are still doing 30, 35 hours a week doing it well. Your Hayden Wiles, and, they're doing sprint distance on Olympic distance. So, and they don't really change that much, but they're the best in the world at Olympic distance and sprint distance. Sprint distance is over an hour, and they're doing the massive high volumes of training. So anyway, it's a complicated procedure because there's just so much going on with HYROX. So I think eventually you'll have, all the EMONs and the Metcons and all that sort of stuff will fall away in place of just cycling, running, max strength, and then a few specific station work around it. That's what I think the training will go. But anyway, what about we talked about the men's race. What about the women's? Was that a surprise to you? Because I got up. When did I get up? I must have woke up and I turned it on, and it was about, I think they were just on the row, so I never really saw how it unfolded. And I saw this lady leading, and I'm like, who's this? Was that a surprise to you?
Oh man, it was, man. It really, really was. But hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? And I guess Alyssa, like, given her background in marathon, that circles back to our volume is king, or volume is queen in this example here. Like, I mean, her mileages that she's running to make the US Olympic marathon trials, absolute weapon. So that it did shock me, though. It really shocked me. Like, again, like in terms of watching it live, her run splits were just absolutely beautiful to watch.
She looked like she didn't even look like she was trying.
Oh man, just that great sort of Kodak moment smile every time she ran around the stadium. Stations, obviously, and she admits this is still a big work on for her because it's all still so new.
Yeah, it's like a second ever pro race.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, crazy.
If I was Joanna Vietrix, I would be really considering how I'm going to be training to beat that for the next season, because it's not going to be easy at all.
I completely agree. Agree, because Joanna, absolute weapon, obviously women's world record holder. But again, I guess now you're seeing that exposure of someone, again, going back to that concept of a high training volume that's now jumped into the sport, and it's like, okay, I've got some catching up to do. Lauren, surprised me a little. I had Lyon within the top three, but again, visually, man, such an aggressive racer, and it was interesting to see. Obviously, she sent that first kilometer like hard, and again, I'm just going visually. I'm not getting the commentary from Greg and Lauren on that one there, but again, you see Joanna pop off the ski erg first, and you could just see, Lauren sending it just to, again, get that almost ego-driven advantage and just blowing up. And it was interesting. I'm not too sure if you saw the post, but she posted her heart rate data the next day. Just crazy. The massive spike, almost zone 5, bang, and then levels out during the comp and then peaks again for wall balls. But that ego run number 2.
Yeah, right. That will be especially, and that, if it's hot as well, that spike will not do you any favors.
No. So completely different race strategy to Dylan's. And you can see what the result was.
And also a big standout for me was Sinead Bent.
Yep.
What she had a very good race. Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm always rooting for, even though I'm a Kiwi, I'm always rooting for the Brits.
Yeah, I agree. I'd picked Sinead in top 3, and I was sort of like not doubting myself. I was like, oh, I'm not too sure if she's going to make top 3 sort of midway through the race, but phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal, very impressive.
Yeah. And then my personal highlight of the entire elite series though was my good man Pelayo getting on the podium.
100%.
Oh,
100%.
almost brought a tear to my eye.
Yeah. So do you want to give the listeners a bit of a background of you and Pelayo and
yeah, well, Pelayo was helping with my training a bit last year. I'm leading up to the Worlds, and I stayed with him and Alina in the lead up to the Worlds because they live in Chicago, and honestly, they're such a beautiful, awesome couple, and we've become really good friends. And Pelayo's from an age group triathlon background as well, like myself, and I was there with him during that really horrific period where he was trying to get his Achilles right and it just didn't, and then had all that disappointment. And I've kind of talked to him along that journey of getting from basically his Achilles was in tatters, literally holes in it, basically, and for him to kind of rebound himself to get to where he's been is just amazing, really. I mean, he's just so consistent. He's a very, very smart man, Pelayo. I think people don't realize that. He's got a PhD in like climate change. So he's super smart. He's very meticulous, knows a lot about training. He knows he's an ultimate strategist. And did you see his lunges? Did you see them?
Yeah.
Man, he was just, he's not a strong guy either. He's not super strong. He's strong enough, but man, he is so efficient at the stations. Like watching him do his burpees, it's just incredible. He's someone who, if you got somebody who had a really big, no offense, Pelayo, Pelayo's got a reasonable engine, but it's not, I don't think it's like a huge, like Christian Blummenfelt sort of engine. But if you've got that sort of engine with Pelayo type efficiency, that's the sort of person where your 50-minute, sub 50-minute HYROX is coming from. And to be honest with you, the engine wouldn't have to be as big as Christian Blumenfeld's, but even if you're like a 75-80 VO2 max type person, his sort of level of efficiency is where you're gonna. I think that is the person who will be breaking 50 hours 50 minutes in the men's race.
50 hours, yeah.
50 hours would be good. You could probably break that.
I could probably just if I had a good night's sleep. And I think you see that across the board, like it's not, we're not getting at this point, it's not to say it's not going to happen, but we're not getting like those extreme outliers that have dominated other sports. We're not getting Olympic gold medalists or world record marathoners coming across the HYROX and destroying it. It's typically people that have been good, like very good at other sports, but not super elite, like they've got that kind of blend.
Yeah, so I've got a theory on this. I don't know if my theory is right, but have you ever thought that perhaps like not being quite the best is why they're good at HYROX? Because maybe like if you take triathlon, you're that good because you're so aerobically developed that you're just right on the other side, that you've got no like anaerobic or power attribute, right?
Yep.
So you just can't switch. Like Sebastian Kinley is a prime example, world Ironman champion, Kona winner so many times. He's good at HYROX, but he's not that good. Pelayo's way better than him, and Pelayo's nowhere near as good as him at triathlon. So, and it's the same the other side. If you get a really good CrossFitter, for example, they're just too much down the anaerobic side, and they can't shift that way. So you have that kind of endurance athlete who's just not quite good enough. They're good, but they're not quite good. Are the ones who seem to do a little bit better, because that's what you see all the time. You often hear like people saying, "Oh, HYROX is for failed athletes," which I hate. It really annoys me when I hear that comment. But perhaps that's who you want to be. You want to be the failed athlete.
I completely agree, mate. It's almost like if you've got 100 gold coins that you can spread across physiological attributes, and to be, going to that triathlete example, you'd spend maybe, 85% of those gold coins on the aerobic component.
Mm,
But unfortunately, HYROX, you can't do that, eh? You've got to spread those coins out
mm,
across multiple different avenues. And yeah, again, sort of circling back to coaching discussions, had a great question from one of the coaches at during one of our workshops as to what sport should we be talent IDing from or trying to poach athletes from, and so people were throwing out some examples. One person said a decathlon, but that's probably a little bit too strength and power dominant. Other people were saying, cross country skiing, this kind of stuff. And again,
skiing,
they were talking about
honestly.
yeah, from a doubles perspective. But my sort of 2 cents, and this wasn't just an answer, it was just more of a sort of broader picture thinking, is that at the moment people were labeling based on physiology, the physiological attributes of that athlete or the sport. But I said, for example, like I recently trained two ex-AFL Aussie rules football players that qualified for Worlds from Australia in the men's pro double, and they did exceptionally well. So shout out to David Barden and Tom Curran. But the thing about Aussie rules football is that in a game, they're running 15 to 16 kilometers per game. There's a shitload of high speed running, and it's power dominant, being a contact sport. So physiologically, it's great. But the other thing to layer on top of that, and this is more, I guess, the softer skills of coaching, the fact that those two have come from a team sport and now they're excelling in doubles. They're used to operating in a team environment. They're used to really getting the best out of people. And I think sometimes that really needs to be factored in because, you could have the two fantastic physiologies of solo athletes, but put them together as a team and they may not click. So that's a different sort of element of coaching we need to think about as well.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, I do, when I've been writing this article, one of the concluding marks was I was feeling that middle distance runners would be, for a single, would be where a young, like a Sam Ruth, someone that sort of person, Sam Ruth, who's, for those who don't know, is like, broke the 4-minute mile, but that sort of ilk of athlete who can start to develop the strength attributes would be the key. But I said cross country skiing, it always makes me laugh because honestly Norway has the most dodgy metabolic carts. I just think that their VO2 max data is so bogus. Norway did great research, but the metabolic cart data is just very suspect. Anyway.
Yeah. Plus or minus 20. And actually, before my brain forgets, real good shout out to Pelayo. That was phenomenal. And I bumped into Alina before his competition and had a good chat with her, but he was just dialed in, so I didn't want to disrupt him.
Yeah.
But it was crazy. Like I remember you and I were having dinner with him in Chicago after the race, whereas
I remember before you were just too busy eating that deep pan pizza.
Yeah, deep dish pizza is amazing. But was it a full rupture? He pretty much had in his Achilles.
No, it wasn't a full rupture, but it was hanging on by a thread, basically.
Yeah.
He had 3. I mean, he went over to Spain. He saw a really big specialist. He had 3 PRPs in there.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, he's my inspiration for an injured Achilles. It shows that anything can happen.
Yeah, but I mean, to go from that tragic state, and rightly so, he was in at that post-race meal in Chicago to podium.
Yeah, what a legend.
A year later, that's a great story.
We're gonna get Pelayo and Alina on the podcast together, which will be a lot of fun. So we're gonna be cool. I've already spoke to Pelayo about it, so they're in the Dolomites at the moment, but they're gonna come on together, which will be awesome. Which will be epic. Last thing to talk about really is the women's doubles as well.
Yeah, man.
That was I think that was the least surprising. That was like probably the only race of the weekend that went to, as expected almost, really, because they're the world record holders, Lauren Weeks, and they it was kind of that, and they were quite dominant, to be fair.
I agree. I think first place, that was locked in. I did think Joanna and Jess would have podiumed though. And I mean, getting fourth,
Yeah.
obviously that's close, but that was probably a shock for me. Yeah.
They were only 5 seconds though. 5
Yeah.
seconds
Yeah.
podium. So,
So yeah, and it's a great sign. It just means, it's a sign of the rise and talent. But in saying that, obviously, that was the last time you're getting those mixed
yeah.
pairings, eh? So I guess.
Next year's gonna be interesting, isn't it? So,
Mm.
I mean, I think
What's your
I was
take on it? You're a fan of
yeah, I'm a
racing?
fan. Yeah, I'm a
I
fan.
am too as well.
I'm a fan, yeah.
I'm too.
I think it's good. I think it should be that way. It's,
Yep.
I don't know actually how is it gonna run with, age groups? Age groups is any country still, or is it within the same region?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's any country. I'm pretty sure that's any country.
Okay.
But again,
What
the elites, and it's interesting. Some people are, oh, that's such a silly rule, but I'm a big fan of it. Like you've got to,
yeah, it's a great rule. It's a great
yeah,
rule. I mean, I would wonder, Pelayo must be quite close to getting his green card in the US, so maybe he might be going back with Rich Ryan, who knows?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
um, what was I gonna say? What about regionals? For Elite 15 regionals, is that still a thing next year?
From what I understand, I believe it is. Yeah.
Because
I
then in the regionals, you have to be from the same country, or could it be Australia, New Zealand, and forming a team?
Great question.
Yeah, I need to find that. We need to find that out. Great questions. Anyway, so what else is going on? What's going on this week? We're gonna finishing up.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of just in a bit of a catch up mode now. Yeah, there's some cool stuff that's on the boil for, I guess, HYROX as a whole. So Young Stars is a big hot topic at the moment as well. Obviously, for our listeners who may not be familiar with it, that's the child or kid version of HYROX, which is very cool. So it's ages 8 to 15. And they've got 4 age categories spread across that. So again, shout out to Piers Plowman, who's doing a lot of like amazing work in that space. And yeah, I'm doing a bit of work with Piers at the moment to help develop like a strength and conditioning framework for the kids. And
Oh yeah, that's cool.
yeah, the reason I put my hand up for that one there is I'm a huge fan of it, and mainly because my son Cully, he's 10, is just an absolute training frother, much like his old man. So he really wants to get involved in that as well, and we're just waiting for it to come down, Young Stars to come down this way.
Yeah.
Which
What's the
would be cool.
minimum age? I think the minimum age is 8, isn't it?
8. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So Bella can get into it, but Jake will be a bit young still, but
Yeah.
he'll
And
love it.
it's really cool because it's so awesome to see these kids competing and loving it. And again, like we're viewing it from not only just trying to make them HYROXs and viewing HYROX as a sport as well, but it has so many other crossover benefits from health and wellness, but also,
Coordination and
when,
all.
yeah,
The whole
when you
shebang.
look at the youth development research is not about early specialization. That shows that actually blunts performance. So HYROX being so many different movement patterns, so many different ways to train, that's going to help them in all other sports as well.
Yeah. My brother's kids did the one in Rotterdam.
Oh, really? Awesome.
Yeah, they did it, and they loved it. And other things with the ENDUROX space, we're just about to launch our new ENDUROX Intelligence System as well, which is and be very exciting. We're going to be the first platform to ever do that. So, just to give a bit of a background, we'll probably be hopefully we're going to launch it with current members next week, so it'll be going into their programs. And what happens is that now through the ENDUROX Intelligence System, it will look at your race results. It'll pull all your race results, and you can choose any race that you want to base your training off. And then it'll look at where your strengths and weaknesses lie in terms of the stations. And from that, it will choose different exercises. So we'll have 1 all-in exercise, 3 priority, and then you'll get 5 maintenance, which will include the running as well. So, for example, rather than at the end of a HYROX endurance, rather than it being like a 10-minute EMON of wall balls or whatever it might be, it will specifically choose your all-in station, or it will choose your priority station. So every time you do HYROX sessions, it's more individualized to where you need to work on your strengths and weaknesses. So that's pretty exciting, and I think we're going to only develop it further to what we talked about before with the force velocity profiling is also then allowing the some of the strength sessions to be more geared towards your strength, your station weaknesses as well. So that's pretty exciting. Been working hard on that in the background, and it's all finally coming together. These things always take longer than you expect, don't they?
They do, mate. They absolutely do. But hey, we're getting there. That's the main thing.
Getting there. All right, mate. Cool. Well, guess until next time.
Until next time, my friend.
Mate, thanks for listening, people. Ciao.
Right. Catch ya.